係局局長。
Secretary for Environment and Ecology. Deputy President, I move the second reading of the Private Columbaria Amendment Bill 2024. More than a decade ago, non-compliant private columbaria were commonplace. To tackle this problem, the government enacted the Private Columbaria Ordinance, Cap 630, and established a licensing regime to ensure private columbaria's compliance with statutory and government requirements, enhance protection of consumer interest, and foster adoption of a sustainable mode of operation by private columbaria. Given that a considerable number of members of the public had purchased niches from or had had the ashes of their ancestor interred in pre-cut-off columbaria before the enactment of the ordinance, the ordinance embraces a pragmatic and sympathetic approach in regulating columbaria that were in operation and in which ashes were interred in its niches immediately before the cut-off time. That is the pre-cut-off columbaria under the ordinance as agreed by the Legislative Council and the community at large. Since the enactment of the ordinance through the licensing regime, the government identified private columbaria for regularization, progressively rectified pre-cut-off columbaria's violation of requirements in the past, and enhanced protection of consumer interests by issuing specified instruments and taking enforcement action. Through the efforts of the Private Columbaria Licensing Board, PCLB, pre-cut-off columbaria currently applying for licenses and/or exemption were found to be in compliance with the basic requirements relating to building, fire, and electrical and mechanical safety, and actions are being taken to ultimately comply with all of the requirements. Having summarized the operational experience of the ordinance, we propose to introduce legislative amendments to improve the existing regulatory regime for private columbaria and to enhance protection of consumer rights. First of all, noting that some pre-cut-off columbaria applying for licenses may have to cease operation and dispose of ashes as a result of unsuccessful applications, the bill proposes to appropriately adjust the eligibility criteria for exemption to allow pre-cut-off columbaria meeting certain conditions to apply for such exemption, thus enabling their continued operation at their current scale and averting ash disposal. The proposed specified conditions include that the pre-cut-off columbaria is not located in a densely populated residential area, etc., so as to balance the interest of various parties. The bill also improves the enforcement-related provisions to enhance the deterrent effect, include raising the penalties for non-compliance with enforcement notices, creating new offenses, and amending existing ones to prohibit overselling of niches and overplacing niches, as well as prohibiting private columbaria from continuing to sell the right of interment in the event that their authorization has been revoked or suspended, so as to safeguard the interests of consumers. At present, there is an appeal mechanism provided for in the ordinance under which the Private Columbaria Appeal Board, PCAB, is responsible for handling appeals lodged against decision made by the PCLB or the DFEH. To ensure that the PCAB will apply a consistent standard in handling appeals, the bill provides that the board may receive and consider new materials that have never been provided to the PCLB only when special reasons are demonstrated. Temporary storage of ashes is required by masons for their business operations. After enactment of the ordinance, the government put in place administrative measures to allow registered masons to temporarily keep ashes. As the existing arrangement have been effective and can balance the needs of masons and the public, the bill will set out that the ordinance does not apply to registered masons subject to specified conditions. We conducted a public consultation on the proposed amendments in May this year. We also met with stakeholders, including operators of private columbaria, representatives of the masonry trade, interested parties, and the legislative councils to introduce the bill in detail and exchange views. Each of the proposals was supported by at least 85% of the respondents. We consulted the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene of the Legislative Council in February and July this year and obtained their support. I'd like to thank members for their support and comments. Subject to the passage of the bill, we will continue to provide support to private Columbaria operators to help them understand the new arrangements under the bill so as to enable them to make appropriate decisions on the way forward for their operation and to help them understand the responsibilities and obligations under the ordinance. President, the proposals in the bill can optimize the regulatory regime of private Columbaria for the benefit of the trade and the public. We'll fully cooperate with the scrutiny work of the Legislative Council so that the bill can be passed and implemented as soon as possible. I so submit. Thank you, President. I now propose the question to you that the aforesaid bill be read the second time. In accordance with the rules of procedure, the second reading debate is adjourned and the bill is referred to the House Committee.